by the European School Education Platform, the European Commission's platform for school education in Europe. My name is Nikki, and I will be your host for today. Just some practical information before we officially start the webinar. Just so you know, it will be recorded, and the recording may be used for dissemination purposes. Also, if you have any questions during the webinar, we will have 15 minutes dedicated specifically for questions, but feel free to type them in the chat, and then we'll eventually get to them. So the focus for today's webinar is how to become an eTwinning school, shared leadership in practice. It's my pleasure to invite on the virtual stage Donal O Reilly, who is a senior leader at Killorglin Community College in Ireland from 2007 to 2019. This webinar will focus on Donal's journey as an educator, how eTwinning and Erasmus Plus became embedded in the school culture, and aims on how to provoke participants to reflect on their own context and school journey. So without further ado, I will pass on the floor to our speaker, Donal.
Thank you very much, Nikki, and welcome and hello to everybody from Ireland, and sending you love and greetings across Europe. Okay, my slides aren't advancing, so let's see. Okay, so as I'm coming from Ireland, that's us in the small little red dot down in the southwest of Ireland, in the beautiful wild Atlantic way, surrounded by some beautiful mountains on a clear day. That is actually Ireland's tallest mountain, highest mountain. And I have the luxury of having a beautiful beach close by as well. So, you know, come visit, and that is my piece for the promotion of tourism for Ireland. This is my school, which Nikki said correctly. I was there as a senior leader for a number of years, and which I will return to again very, very soon. And we were lucky to receive the eTwinning school label for 2021. So what this is, this is an overview of me. I have been teaching for a shocking 27 years. I have had the luxury of working in 7 secondary schools in Ireland, as well as working with European SchoolNet and as an eTwinning ambassador as well, which has afforded me the opportunity to see different schools in the Irish context, and also to see your schools at European level as well. And I've appreciated having that opportunity, because many teachers find that they maybe work in one school for their whole career, or maybe only 2. So I'm delighted to be able to take that, take the learning from that, and share that learning with you today. So just to get your fingers warmed up, and as people are still joining from the lobby, I'd like you to pop into the chat so I can look back afterwards and answer the following questions. Number 1, what country are you joining us from today? So pop in the answer, just the country you're coming from. And number 2, if you were to decide, as we come to the end of January, on a Monday afternoon, what animal would you choose to describe how you are feeling today? As I said, I'm joining from Ireland. Today, I feel like a lion. Today, I feel like a lion that I'll take on. I can take on the world, but maybe by Friday I might not feel like such a lion. So I'd welcome your comments in the chat there for what country you're joining us from and what animal you would choose to describe how you are feeling today. And we'll move on. So my presentation today is based around the eTwinning school mission, but also in an effort to contextualize it for my school and my story. I hope that whether you're new to eTwinning, an intermediate eTwinner, or an expert eTwinner, that you will take something out of this, and I welcome your connections afterwards. And I do hope that you learn something and take away after today. I would also invite you, and this is something that I have begun in the last 10 years. I have began to reflect on my practice and my interactions with people, because I always find it frustrating when dealing with students and teachers and parents and other stakeholders. And I began reflecting on what I can change, because I have no power to change other people, but I do have the power within myself to change myself and change practices in my own classroom or in my own environment. So I would invite you today, as you listen and journey with me through my own journey, I would invite you to be reflective, and I assure you, the more reflective you are, the more effective you are. So the first statement in the mission is eTwinning schools have a commitment to shared leadership. Now, this is a bold statement, a large statement, an ambitious statement. And I would ask myself, and I would urge you to ask yourself, is how can we achieve this? And who is responsible to that commitment of shared leadership? Delving deeper into the text, it states that the school principal and teacher leaders, and this is something that's very, very close to my heart. When I look back on my 27 years of teaching, I believe I was a school leader long before I became a formal school leader. And I think that gave me job satisfaction, and it certainly contributed positively to my classroom environment, my school environment, and the school community. And how do we do this? How do we develop the shared leadership? How do we act as teacher leaders? What should we focus on? I would say that relationships and trust are key, and they don't happen easily. They don't happen lightly, and we need to put some work in. I would also say that you must have a culture of accepting mistakes and learning from them. Obviously, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is a sign of madness. But if you make mistakes and accept the mistakes and learn from them, then that is a good foundation to any school community. And of course, communication. If you ask any teachers in any school or any school community, communication is key. What does that look like in Killorglin Community College? I found that leadership was a type of a dirty word. Teachers thought leadership equated to more work for them. So I began identifying leaders, identifying leadership, examples of leadership in practice, and discussing what I've seen and explaining why I thought they were leaders, and that empowered them, and it got them reflecting, and it got them thinking. And that was the cultivation of leadership. Small conversations, simple conversations, encouraging people. When I saw the opportunity or created the opportunity to allow someone to display these leadership skills or traits, I did so in small steps. And I think that's important as well. Small, because if there's a mistake, it's not critical, and we learn from that. And small, because you don't want to overburden somebody as well. So in those small steps, you're creating the space to lead, and you're allowing the leaders of the school, the teacher leaders in the school, to express themselves. I would be mindful of delegation. I would be mindful of creating that space, because delegation sometimes is seen as handing out jobs. You know, that's your job and you're asking me to do that. So when you do delegate, you hand it over 100% and you allow the person to make it their own. In Killorglin, I often had the mantra that the first time I asked somebody to do a task that I would have normally done it, they would do it maybe not as good as I would have done it. The second time, they would do it as good as I would ever have done it. And the third time they would have done it, they would have done it much better and more efficiently and more effectively than I would ever have done it. So, you know, you have to wait and you will have to allow people to grow and develop. Again, when I reflect back in my school, and I often made the mistake of going too fast, and I had to check myself, and I had to remember that if you want, the old African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that is something that the mistake that I made sometimes. particularly in my early years, you know, having an idea and going it alone, going fast, but being too far ahead of everybody else then to be able to share that and bring together a team and the school community. Another statement is that the eTwinning schools display a strong commitment to collaboration, sharing and teamwork. Now this is something I'm passionate about, because you can say collaboration and you can mean collaboration. And I think far too often I have heard the word collaboration being used, but when I look to see it, I don't see real collaboration. And we must accept that real collaboration can be messy. It's not clinical, it's not easy. It will fail and you have to come back and try it again. And once you accept that and you keep trying, you will be successful. Again, it's easy for me to collaborate with my colleague that I am friendly with outside of school. But it's much more of a challenge for me to collaborate with a person inside in school who has different interests to me. But I think that's where we need to push ourselves. We need to be professionals. We need to get outside that zone and collaborate with everybody. Sharing, it's important to share. And again, when I was going to school and when I was training as a teacher, the mindset was not to share. The mindset was you're working inside your classroom and you don't share what you're doing. You develop resources, you don't share them. Thankfully, that has changed. And inside in Killorglin Community College, sharing is part of our culture. And we would encourage you to share inside and outside of the classroom across your professional networks. And teamwork is important as well in achieving this aim for the eTwinning mission. But again, this doesn't happen easy. And what I have always done, not always, what I've done more recently is I've asked, am I a good team player? What can I bring to the team? How can I make this team better? Because previously I used to be looking at others and saying what, you know, pointing out their challenges rather than focusing on myself. So how can you take this back to your own context? In Killorglin Community College, we would have had structured subject department meetings. So previously we would have had, so this trying to build a team and bring a formality to it and bring some type of system of collaboration and sharing. So structured subject department meetings, keeping it simple. One page of minutes, a few notes, a few bullet points, based on actions. What's going to be done and who's going to do it. We also supported a rotating coordinator. So whether there was 2 in the department or 22 in the department, everybody would get a chance at being a coordinator. And what that does then is it doesn't allow one person just to take over. Everybody knows that their turn is going to come. They're invested in it. And they know that when their chance comes, they can make their own mark as well. The communities of practice were very much encouraged in our school. And that's where teachers that had shared interests came together outside of school time, but outside of those people that were in school as well. So you're sharing with other schools. Whenever teachers went on professional development or Erasmus or involved in eTwinning, we always encouraged show and tell sessions at staff meetings or mini teach meets. We also promoted teachers to attend national and international teach meets where there was a desire and where it was appropriate. Team teaching was something we explored as well, and it took many, many years, but it allowed that professional dialogue to take place between teachers in subject areas. And again, back to creating a safe space for that to happen. Go slowly, discuss what's to be done, how it's to be done, and what are the parameters. And again, accept that mistakes are going to be made by everybody. Open your classroom door. When I was a teacher, I was king of my own classroom and I did my own work. And in Killorglin Community College, I'm not sure why or how it happened, but I opened my classroom door. And what that allowed is it brought the classroom out into the corridor and the corridor into the classroom. And what happened then was teachers passing or students passing, they saw what was happening in the classroom. And then somebody would stop. And then somebody would step over the threshold of the door. And then I would use that opportunity then to have a professional conversation about what I was doing, explaining what I was doing, how I was doing it, why I was doing it, and I would invite input from the students in the classroom as well. And all these little things are building your culture, building your relationships with students, building your relationships with other teachers and other members of the school community. The next statement focuses on students in eTwinning schools are agents of change. And that's the student voice to me. And I'd invite you to reflect, where are you now on the journey of including student voice? And where do you want to be? Where I want to be is referencing the Lundy model, Professor Laura Lundy, an Irish professor, where she advocates for student voice across the whole school community. That's not where we are now, but that's where we strive to be. When we started in Killorglin Community College, we had a student council. Our very, very first student council were hand-picked. So obviously the student council gave us feedback that we wanted to hear. Not really great for the student voice. After a number of years, we decided to do random focus groups, and that's where the richness really came from our students, because these were randomly picked students with additional needs across the board, across the years, of different ages, and they spoke very, very openly and honestly. Now, when they spoke openly and honestly, we had created that safe environment for them to do so, and nobody was going to challenge them about what they were saying or who they were saying it about. But we listened, we consulted, we listened, we acted on it, and then we went back to them for feedback as well. And that's a cycle that continues to exist in the school today. And because the student council is seen as a voice for students, we're getting a blend of students onto that student council now, and it's democratically voted upon. We must make sure that it's inclusive and not exclusive student voice, like the example I gave you at the start, where we were very exclusive at the beginning, but now we strive to be inclusive, and now we strive to have student voice captured across the whole school all day. Involve the students in the decision-making process, make sure they're represented at the table. So when we were developing our code of behavior, the students were involved. When we were discussing learning environments, the students were involved. We asked them to take control of their learning spaces, whether that's designing them, painting them, filling them, all driven by students. And I have there write on windows. You must think I'm crazy saying write on windows. But as we developed the culture of using our spaces and getting students involved, somebody had the brainwave of getting window markers. The window markers you see the butcher write his messages and his advertisement on. And where collaboration was happening, we were able to use that extra space. So students would gather around a window, be able to write on it, and it was inspirational, but it was capturing their voice and ensuring that they were the agents of change as well. I invite you to consider, would you sit down and eat your lunch with students in your school? And what would the effect of that be? I attended the BET Educational Technology Show in London many, many years ago, and I was inspired by a school principal who knocked down the staff canteen and invested in the student canteen, but students and teachers all sat together. So I experimented with that in my school, and I discovered for the first few weeks when I sat in the school canteen with the students, I was left alone. Nobody came to speak to me. But over time, and as it became a custom and a practice, I ended up sharing the table and sharing stories with students during my lunchtime. And again, that is something that it sends a signal to the students that there's equality in the school, that it's not an us and them. And I built relationships, and I found students able to approach you, and I felt more approachable because of the bonds that were built up at that time. eTwinning schools are models for other schools. It's important to model what you believe in. I'm a parent of 3 young boys, age 10, age 11, 10, and 6. And I can tell them what to do and what not to do all day, all week, all year. But inevitably, what they will do is what I model. And I think the same goes for teachers and the same goes for schools. So I would encourage eTwinning schools to model what they're doing, to share their learning, but more importantly, share your mistakes. And by sharing your mistakes, you're reflecting on your mistakes and you're reflecting on your own learning as well. And use your school's network, your local, international, to make sure that you're spreading it across a wider network as possible. And as you share, of course, you will be learning as well in return. And just remember to be authentic and be yourself. And you don't need to be perfect. Nobody expects you to be perfect. So don't try to be perfect. When I look at this part of the mission being models for other schools, I reflect on when I share what we do in school, when I share at webinars like this, and in the preparation for this, and when you have to explain what you were doing and why you're doing it, I think we develop a greater understanding of what we're doing. Because we're experiencing it, but we're teaching others as well. We're explaining the why. And that's one of the benefits when you are modeling and when you are sharing across your networks. You're really drilling down into your own practice, into your own learning, into your own experience. And you're taking away that as well as sharing with the others who are on a journey of their own. eTwinning schools are inclusive and innovative learning organizations. And this is very important to get the balance right. Inclusivity is as important now as it ever was. And being innovative is important, and it can solve many, many of our challenges, and it can create opportunities. But we need to get a plan and we need to get the balance right. As I reflect on my time in Killorglin Community College, I think sometimes I got a little bit overexcited by the innovation, and maybe I forgot the inclusivity. So it's important for me to remind myself that it's a balance, and one can complement the other, but I would certainly say that inclusivity has to take priority. Universal design for learning for me, even though I'm only on the beginning of the journey, certainly is a game changer for me. I always found it challenging in the classroom dealing with students of different abilities. And I come from a background of the technologies where I always had students with varying abilities, and very often I had students with additional needs because of the nature of my subject. And I always found it difficult and challenging when I was asked to differentiate, because differentiation to me meant giving different people different work. And young people are so smart. The young person with additional needs knows that they're after getting a different sheet or different homework from the person next to me. So with Universal Design for Learning, and I'd invite you to, if you haven't looked into it already, to explore it. With Universal Design for Learning, it really addresses this issue at the design stage of your lessons and your schemes of work. And hopefully it will lead to more inclusivity inside the classroom. I think in Killorglin, we always experimented with our teaching methodologies, but you can experimentation without evaluation isn't very beneficial. So again, the change happened for me as a teacher when not only was I experimenting, but I was asking why and how. What changes were happening as a result of me changing my teaching methodologies? And of course, who did I ask? The students, the student voice, because they are the users, they're the end users, and they know what they like best. And it will surprise you what they like best. Learning spaces, again, we always we try to maximize our learning spaces in the school. And if you look at your own school in your own context, I wonder how many of the bigger spaces are only utilized in the morning, at break time, and at lunchtime. And we began asking ourselves, why? Why are the biggest spaces in our school the least used? So we expanded the classrooms, not physically, not the walls, but we expanded our teaching and learning to fill those spaces when appropriate, depending on what lesson you were doing, depending what topic. And we looked at what we had, we designed learning spaces into them. And it has been hugely successful. Of course, there's no solution is the silver bullet or a big bang approach. And it needs to be, you need to be cautious. You need to experiment. You need to take time. And you need to make sure that the one size does not fit all. What's working for me in my classroom may not work for everybody in everyone's classroom. And the one piece of feedback that we got from students is that students like varied learning and teaching methodologies, varied learning spaces, because as they go through the school, they don't want the same thing over and over again. So that brings me to the end of the first part of the webinar on how to become an eTwinning school. You might ask me why, and I would say why not. In preparation for this, I saw my national agency, eTwinning Ireland, post something on Twitter advertising the closing date for eTwinning schools with the text, the opportunity to have creativity, teamwork, and international awareness of your staff and students acknowledged. So why wouldn't you do it? Plus, I would add the unintended consequences, all of the other things that happen in a school as you're journeying to be an eTwinning school. Many of the biggest successes that we have enjoyed in our school, the learning experiences, the successes of students haven't been planned. They have been as a byproduct of something that we were doing for eTwinning or for something curriculum based. And they're the ones that I enjoy most. The ones the successes that you hadn't planned for. So for now, in the interest of best practice and well-being, I'd invite you to stand up and stretch, rehydrate for 2 minutes, but consider, as I invited you earlier, to be reflective. When you reflect in your own situation, is there any one action that you can begin tomorrow in your school or organization? Tomorrow, next week, next month. Something that you can control and one action. So I've used up 1 minute of that 2 minutes, and I'm just going to stretch and grab a glass of water now, and I'll be back to you in 60 seconds. For anybody that has just joined us, we haven't stopped. We're just doing a stretch break. I'm going to resume in 30 seconds. Okay, so if everybody is ready. So some policy messages to consider, and I'm going to revisit Killorglin Community College again towards the end of this presentation, and I'd welcome some questions in 10 minutes as well if you have any. I'm not going to bombard you with text, and even though English is my first language, I tend to focus on bullet points. And in this policy message, it urges us to support a culture of collective engagement and responsibility within your school. And overall, what I would encourage you to do is, and speaking from my own experience, I spent many years in my comfort zone, and it's lovely in the comfort zone. It's really nice. You're doing your teaching, you're not challenged, you're getting on with business. But are you growing? Are you growing professionally? And are you growing personally? And to get into the growth zone, you must go through the fear zone first, and then you're in the learning zone. But then you must push, and you must be strong and know what your vision is to get into the growth zone. So looking at the culture of collective engagement and the responsibility within your school, and to be responsible, you need to get out of that comfort zone and head towards the growth zone. And what are the key messages that you are being asked, or what you should consider? Supporting learning through a shared mission, well-being for all. And well-being for all means living well-being, not just talking about well-being, living it. Distributed leadership, new and innovative opportunities, encourage yourself and encourage others to take on leadership roles, strong communication between schools, parents and learners. And if you take note of that last piece, between schools, parents and learners, you will notice that that is the theme that is coming through these policy messages. And if I was to state one of the major changes in our culture in Killorglin Community College would be, it was the engagement of everybody, the collective engagement, having everybody at the table, having everybody at the voice, or having a voice. And I think then people feel included, and that's your full inclusion, or heading towards full inclusion. Mobilizing resources within the school and community. For many years, I was frustrated, and I frustrated myself about the system, about the local authority, about the government, about departments of education, and what could be done or what should be done. And I was only angering myself because I had no control over it. And in recent years, I still get frustrated, but I ask myself, where does this lie in the zone? And if it's out of my control, I put it out of my head. I acknowledge the problem and I put it out of my head. If I have some control over it, I ask myself, how can I control this? Can I make recommendations? Can I make a plan? But for the most of the time, I spend my time focusing on what's in my control. In the center of the circle, what can I do now for myself? What can I do now for my school? What can I now do for my students to have immediate impact? Looking at new resources, new partnerships, working with the broader community. How are the current resources we have used effectively? Are we collaborating? Is it real collaboration? And do we have partnerships with teachers and others? And I'll give you one example of this about mobilizing the resources within the school and community in Killorglin Community College. I was at a European SchoolNet in the Future classroom, and I spoke about this, and the conversations were going towards what could be done and what was not being done. And it all resulted in more money and more time. And I wanted to get my students working around in a circle. And we had rectangular tables. So we had 12 rectangular tables, 2 students sitting at each one, 24 students, maybe more. So I went back to the school. In one room, we took out 12 and we cut oval, egg shape shapes out of large sheets of timber. We screwed them down on top of a table. We put them back into the room. So each table now had 6 spaces, 5 for students, and a spaced in for a teacher to sit down as well if they wanted to. That cost the school maybe €100. 100 euro. Had it an impact? Phenomenal. Within 2 years, every teacher in every classroom had that same setup, but different, slightly different. Some wanted color tables, some wanted different measurements on their tables, some wanted whiteboard in the middle of the table so they could work. So for €100 investment into each room over a 2-year period, we totally changed the teaching and learning inside in the school. So when you look at your own culture, be creative and focus on what you can control as opposed to what's out of your control. Participation in networks cannot be measured enough. But you must be aware of the networks you're in. When you're in the staff room, when you're having a cup of coffee, or when you're at the water cooler getting some water, you're having conversations. That's a network. Try to have professional conversations whenever you can. Ask questions. Be willing to listen. We're very lucky that we have the huge networks available to us now across Europe and internationally because of the World Wide Web, because of European SchoolNet and the European Commission. And they're all very important. But the network in your own school is probably one of the most important that you will have. And again, like I said before, it's easy to talk to the person that you have support the same football team or that you have something in common with. But how about speaking to the person that you don't know much about? Find out about them, have a professional conversation with them, and you'd be surprised at what you might find out. Because that person could be an expert. They could have a certain area of focus that they are interested in, that they might want to share with you. Encourage those people that you don't know on staff to participate in networks. And again, the community partners are mentioned here as well, and the opportunities for collective learning. As I was preparing for this presentation, and actually only 30 minutes ago or an hour ago, I decided to put this in because these are 2 phrases. I don't know, are they quotes? I don't know where they came from, but there are 2 phrases that I think of a lot. And the second one actually is something that has been highlighted to me only recently with some part of my journey that I'm going through at the moment. But there is no fail, there is no mistake. You achieve or you learn. And that's for me, I achieve or I learn. And I also look at growing through my disappointments as much as through my successes. And I feel that I grow much more personally and professionally through the disappointments and where I feel I have failed as through my successes. And I would urge you to consider that and use that as a platform to stay positive about whatever happens in your journey or on your journey, whether it's personal or professional. So my journey spanned in Killorglin Community College from 2007 right up to 2023. There were many changes along the way. I became deputy principal in 2007. We had a lot of staff retirements in 2010. I became acting principal in 2019. I started working for my government, Department of Education Ministry in 2020. COVID arrived to us all. 2022 came, and who knows what the future holds. I could speak about that whole journey for a week because there were so many interesting things happened along the way, some which were eTwinning related and some maybe not. And I've just listed some of the changes there from 2007 to 2023 for you to take a look at or take a screenshot. And maybe they might prompt you or nudge you or inspire you to say, oh, yes, I could focus on one of those. Because whatever work you do can't be, it has to be contextualized for your school and your context. And there are some more there that you might reflect upon. And you might say that, yes, that suits me. I like that approach. And of course, eTwinning and Erasmus Plus are very much interlinked. And the benefits that we have experienced from being involved in both are immeasurable. They're just huge. We have friends for life made. I have developed my professional networks, and the unintended consequences of projects has been phenomenal. So with that, I think I'm just about on schedule. Thank you very much. Gurav Mahagut in Irish, in our Irish native tongue. And I would welcome any questions or comments that you would have now. Thank you very much, Nikki.
Thank you very much, Donal, for a nice overview on some of the workings of your school in relationship to eTwinning. We do have a couple of questions. First, how can we influence the leaders to encourage them to become an eTwinning school?
There's a very good phrase, is how to lead when I'm not in charge. It's actually a book. So the question is how to influence. Start by conversations. And I do understand that the formal school leaders, the principals and deputies have many, many things on their agenda. Some school leaders, some principals have a fear, I suspect, that when a teacher comes and suggests something, that they themselves think, oh, this is more work for me. This is more work for me. So if you use your terminology and say, I'm really interested in this, I think it'll benefit the school and the students. If you can map it into your national strategy, the European, the ministry strategy, the plan for the school, and actually package it in such a way that the principal goes, of course, we must get involved in this. And you say, and I'm willing to do the work with you and for you. I think that's the most you can do.
Mm-hmm. I actually do have a question myself. You said in the beginning that before, just in general as a teacher, when you were like gathering resources or just finding new ways of teaching, that before it was more like every man for himself, kind of, that there wasn't this culture of sharing. Can you talk about maybe why you think that is, when you saw the shift that you said took place, that now it's like, you know, kind of more open and trying to work together to get the best learning practices?
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't think there's any one thing. I think there's a realization. I suppose with the age of the internet going so crazy and social media and Instagram, it's very hard not to share something now. It's very hard. It's very hard to actually copyright something now. So if you had something and you didn't want it shared, you'd struggle. But as well as that, I do think that people are realizing that team, the value of team. And as teaching has become harder, teaching has become, I think across Europe, across the world, teaching is not easy and it is more challenging. And if you're trying to solve a challenge, 2 heads is better than 1, and 4 heads is certainly better than 1. And I think, you know, all those phrases that we've coined, there's no point in reinventing the wheel and so on and so forth. So to answer your question, I think there's a realization there now that you can't go it alone, or you shouldn't go alone, that you should learn from other people's mistakes. The other thing is, I think people are admitting their mistakes now, and they have the confidence to go, yeah, I did that and it failed. Can anyone tell me why?
I'm sorry?
I think people have the confidence to stand up and say, you know, I failed, or I tried this, and they're looking for help. So I think that's why.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also interesting that like a lot of the topics that are talked about now that are taught in classrooms are things, you know, problems that we're dealing with as a society together. So it's also like a societal way of we should be tackling these issues together. I do not see any more questions in the chat. If you have any, please type them. I saw quite a few questions about whether the presentation will be shared. Yes, and the recording will also be used for dissemination purposes. So the recording will also be available after the fact. Maybe we can wait in case we have any more last-minute questions. But then if not, then we can maybe wrap up a little earlier here. Also, a evaluation form was shared in the chat. If you could please fill that out so we could get your feedback on the webinar all around, that would also be greatly appreciated. Okay.
There's a question in there, actually.
Yes, I see. What would you change if you were to start over your journey as an educator? Thank you for the meeting.
So at the age of 18, I accidentally, it was one of my options. I'm not sure at 18, does anybody know they want to be a teacher? But at 18, I decided. It wasn't like it was a vocation. It was seen as a good job, and I went into a 4-year concurrent degree, education degree, which was very, very good and very, very interesting. I taught for 7 years until I realized I wanted to be a teacher. I got to say that again because that's a bit profound. So I was teaching for 7 years before I realized that I wanted to be a teacher, and I have really embraced and loved teaching ever since. So if there was one thing I could do to go back at my early days, is I worry what type of teacher I was for those first 7 years and what my students experienced, and really did I give them the best I could. So if I could change anything, I would probably delay my entry into education, maybe till 20, and maybe I might have been a little bit more mature when dealing with these young people, because the charge that we have, the job that we have is huge. It's huge. And I was teaching young people at 21 years old. So I was teaching an 18-year-old when I was 21. So if I could change that and allow myself to be trained as a teacher, and then kind of enter a type of apprenticeship role where I had a mentor. And funny, in the job that I'm at the moment, where I deal with newly appointed school leaders, that's what we do. When they're appointed as a principal, they get a mentor to journey for the year, and then they get coached. And I would love to have had that opportunity. And in fact, that opportunity is now in Ireland through a bridging program, that you don't qualify at 21 and get left off into the wild. You do have a mentor and you're supported along the way. So yes, that's the one thing that I would love my early years to have had a little bit more support.
Okay, good question, or a little bit of a reflection into the past. It looks like there are no more questions. So I think maybe we can wrap this up. Thank you once again, Donal, for your time. It was great to hear your story, and I really hope the participants got a lot out of it. Like I said, the reporting will be shared, and I think that's about it. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Nikki, for having me and for your collaboration over the last number of weeks.
Thank you for taking the time.